Well, welcome to another meeting of the Four Amigos, and we're here with expert topics for MicroGiants. And we've got a good topic for today with all of these old salts that you can see here on the screen, representing a lot of years of being in business and consulting to business. Man, a lot of years, maybe 100 years, just to kind of around the table here. It's a very old shaky table at this point. So we're gonna have a conversation today about an article that was printed in Vistage recently on Vistage's website. Vistage is an organization where business owners get together on an ongoing basis, sort of with a leader to solve business problems. They help each other. The leader kind of facilitates. And they have a good research group of people that work with the Vistage, participants all over the country, and also do their own research. This particular article represents the top 3 issues that these people have. So this is I'm going to help me out, Ray. I'm going to say that these are on the larger size of of small business. In other words, they're not 2 or 3 people, they're 10 people to 50 to 100 people. Is that characterized correctly? Turn your mic on, Ray.
No, I was going to say, I think people and the issues of people are significant, even at the smallest size business, simply because making that transition from being a solopreneur to being an employer is really, really hard because people don't want to let go, and then they realize if they're going to grow the business, they have to. So, well, I'd have to say that it's relevant to every business.
Yeah, well, I agree it's relevant. I was just trying to characterize that this is on the little bit larger, more successful side of small business. That's all. The 3 things that they came up with were workforce volatility, infrastructure for execution, and opportunity in the aftermath of the pandemic. So each one of us will take 3 of us will take the subject, and Ed is going to summarize and kind of finish things up. So we're going to do this a little differently. These are pretty much our expertises as to the way it falls out. So workforce volatility, Ray is going to take that. And as we all know, there are a lot of people moving in and moving out of business today, and it's just unlike it's ever really been. So what do you do about it, and how do you approach that? Ray, give us a little hand here.
Yeah, I think, based on, 30 years of working on probably frontline issues and trying to help companies kind of corral as they best they can, how to keep employees and also make sure that they're capable of doing what they need to do. I agree that it's really the volatility in today's marketplace is very, very difficult. While we have a very low rate of unemployment, that in itself, as Ed mentioned prior to our getting on the phone, is a problem. Because basically, when you have people who have opportunities elsewhere, if they're not unhappy, they leave fairly rapidly because they have chances to go someplace else. Whereas in the past, it was more difficult because basically, hey, I got a job and I'm going to hold on to it. So, on my experience having, both gotten money for people to retrain their employees and helping them, guide them and make them more effective in the workplace, I would have to say that, there's a reluctance on the part of many entrepreneurs to be able to invest in employees, even though there's something being said today that I guess 80% of employees train. That hasn't been my experience. Right. My experience is they only train when they absolutely have to, and it's usually at a very minimal level. And all of us have worked for somebody, and the idea of being trained is, here's your job description. This is the guy you report to. This is what you have to do. Now go get it. For many of us, that's training. And
Yeah.
anything we need to know, we learn by asking somebody around us who's kind enough to be able to help us understand where we're going and what we're trying to do.
Mhm.
So volatility in employees is extremely relevant today. And it's been even more so since the advent of COVID, with people having either left or not being able to come back. So that's kind of my take on the volatility issue.
Yeah, certainly is very, very tough. What would you say are the three or four things, other than say training, that employers need to consider doing, offering in order to try and get folks to stay in a particular business instead of getting picked off by headhunters, et cetera?
Well, I think, and John kind of alluded to this. I think, the bottom line is that if you treat your people well, they'll treat you well. And I think the idea of being able to understand that these are, first of all, humans, and they require some respect and dignity and stuff. And if they're treated well, my experience is that they don't leave. Even if there is an opportunity with more money, 80% of them will stay because they like where they work, they like the people they work with, etc. So, my feeling has always been that the more time you spend in helping employees not only feel like they're doing a job, but they're worthy and they're capable, and they're actually, to use a word that we may overuse at this point, but loved for where they are, I think they'll stay, and you will have less volatility.
Mhm.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. I agree 100% with what you said. I think one of the other issues that people want to know is that the work they're doing is relevant and that the company they're working with is going to stay up with the times. One of the very obvious concerns that we've had is where a company decides to stop evolving, stop growing, want to stay with the status quo. They don't want any kind of a technology evolution, that ultimately the people who are employed by that company become out of date and dated. And it may appear to be a good thing short term, keep everything the status quo, but long term it means you're going to be a dinosaur.
Yeah. And that's going to we're not talking about value today. We've done lots and lots of shows about value in a company, and clearly you're not going to maintain the value of your company if your employers are bored and leave. So, I mean, that all helps the value of the company too. So very good discussion. Second point was infrastructure for execution. Point they make is currently 3/4, 75% of CEOs are investing in technology to reduce the labor burden on the workforce. 12% plan to in the future. I mean, that's 87%. That's a whole lot of people. John has spent a lot of time in technology. He knows a lot about both the physical technology and digital technology. So what do you think? What's going on there,
So
and how can they do a better job?
I'm going to slice this just a little bit different. I'll make a statement. I am going to suggest that the large companies have, for the last 50 years, been doing exactly this. They have been evaluating their infrastructure. They have been making core decisions based on contracts. And I'm going to pick up a couple of them. One that we're very familiar with, McDonald's. Another one is Wendy's. 35 years ago, Wendy's is a smaller company. They realized that for continuity of service, they needed to have some universality to each of their locations. So as they built out, and I worked with an individual who was responsible for building out 30 or 40 locations. They came up with a footprint that was a cookie cutter footprint for their technology, the way they bought their equipment, the way they placed their equipment, the way it interacted with each other, the way it interacted with the customer. And it was a very early example of a medium-sized company realizing that they had to invest in what might appear to be restricting the flexibility of each location, but in the long time, when their team showed up to a location, everything was going to be repeatable and scalable and able to be done. Now, the one that really upped the ante on this was McDonald's, and they realized that the supply side part of their company was critical. And what I mean by that is, it's okay for the client to get their Macs and their coffee and their ice cream, but on time. But what to make that happen, the critical thing was, how do you organize the supply side of all of the supplies coming in? So they integrated some software and digital connectivity software that actually originally came out of New Zealand and was purchased and then designed into the McDonald's supply side work. And why do they do this? Because faultlessly and seamlessly going on in the background, as you order your Big Mac and fries, it's already going on the pick list and it's part of the historic level, even to the point where they can historically look at workload needed in a location based on humidity, time of the year, what season you're in. So they actually had a very large scale do it. Now, here's my take on this. Very difficult for smaller companies to invest in that kind of thinking.
And
So
Mike,
the large companies were doing it.
Question for you is, how does a small business do it?
So the deal was these companies were doing it, and the smaller companies knew, like I knew we should, but how do you do it? Very difficultly. But now we've got this incredible revolution available in apps and software. So I would say today's world, small companies can actually be the David and Goliath. They can take on the big guys with the right CRM, with the right software for their accounting, with their right whatever their application solutions are. And there are several of these out there that we all are familiar with that work seamlessly for a small business that makes them really have a wide footprint. Now, if we fast forward to today, I'm going to talk about a couple of them, but the one that just amazes me is when I talk about it, and it's a big one, and so I apologize for that, but it's Tesla. So Tesla's out manufacturing cars. And then a couple of years ago, I don't know whether you guys, well, we all did, we realized they're doing something that was at initial take a little weird. They're investing high speed and very large scale charging stations all over the place. And it's like, wait a minute, you're a car manufacturer. Now you come forward 2 or 3 years to where we are today. Oh, guess what? Ford, GM, or everybody who's anybody is signing up agreements with who? Tesla cars? No, the charging stations. They invested, hardcore in charging in the infrastructure, but even more than that, the contractual obligations they signed up to. They have obviously got very good, long-lasting contracts for the supply of electricity, but also the software that supports it, so that now they can get paid for when people plug in. So that's an example of a bigger guy. For the smaller guys, I'm going to say in the industry that I'm currently in, which is real estate, housing, there are some exceptionally good small companies that provide a seamless service. I happen to use one called Appfolio, and Appfolio started off, from everything I can see, as an accounting side service, so that if you have tenants, what they're doing is they take care of all of the accounting, all of the banking. They've got a very good banking relationship, so that it's a seamless transaction. You don't have to worry about the money. It's all taken care of. But then they wrapped into that the ability to come up with a lookalike. It's like a signing package. I can't use the name of the most common signing package out there because it would be misleading, but they have a lookalike package that you could send documents and they can be signed online. Integration with that. So now, as an operator, I, as a 1 or 2 or 3 person company, can be as powerful as the big guys. That, I think, is the key. And when we say technology is a very broad word. In this case, there's software technology out there. In other areas, we're talking about literally the technology of putting up hardware stations for charging systems. And in the case, of course, of the fast food industry, we're talking about putting in cookers and fryers. But you know what's fascinating about that industry? Is every one of those cookers and fryers is now seamlessly integrated into a communication shell. And there is incredible levels of technology that's hidden. My final point about this infrastructure for, technology is, if the human who's working in that environment is unable to understand, manage, and control it, it's of almost no value. And I'm going to go back to the VCR days. How many of us had VCRs that we all got, and they could do incredible things? But at some point you go, the power went off, the power went on. I've got a flashing 1200 on my deal. I don't want to go through the hassle of programming this thing so I can program my whatever it is. Yeah. And then I've got to go through manually to go and let it all in. The technology today, the stuff that is really good, is seamless. You don't even know that in the background it's doing the things that you used to have to spend hours doing.
Yeah, I was gonna, if I can, you threw out a term and you didn't explain it. You said CRM, which is a customer relationship management software. And I think one of the things that, both Ron and I have used, we've used Infusionsoft, and you migrated to something else. But if you can mention that, the point we're trying to make here is that those softwares enable us to, as you said, John, we were able to market just like the big guys, because
Sure.
those softwares were able to help us do things that
Well,
we
right.
couldn't do on our own.
To add to that, it used to be that a CRM or a customer relational manager software was satisfactory, that it was keeping all the information in great detail and customization. But now you've got to actually have whatever the application that you're working in, whatever, if you're an HVAC contractor, you want an application sitting in the middle that can tie together the needs of your work with the client. So that's that next module. And then
Well, and the estimates and the invoice too.
right, the
Right,
estimates and
yeah.
invoices. Then the last piece of that is, without having a finance manager, you're really out of your depth. I've got a small HVAC guy that he's going out doing work, and it's great, but then he has to create a bill. Okay, so he uses something like QuickBooks, and he thinks that's great, but it's not. It's just a little piece of the puzzle. It needs to be integrated into the whole application so it becomes seamless. And at that point, you're going to pay several $100 a month for the use of that application, but you can do every aspect of your business, whether it's sales, whether it's maintenance, whether it's billing and invoicing, or HR, technology development. You can do it all from within that. Now, one of the things that people quite often forget about, and we're now realizing it because we've been on Zoom. It's great to be on Zoom. It's great to be in person, but there's a lack right now of a very, very good team interaction software solution. We can make our CRMs work. We can make Google work. We can make Outlook work, but it's still a little clunky. If the four of us really want to interact and not duplicate our files and be able to focus together, I don't believe we've quite got to the level of interaction that we really need to make it a cohesive unit. So that's the piece that I think we're lacking right now.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that and I've, in various companies, I've tried a whole bunch of them. I've done, CRMs from Infusion to Commence, which I loved for many, many years, to HubSpot, which is, probably the Cadillac, but it's expensive for small businesses. And I think the cost is a factor. But so often the business owner, the manager will take a look at the $200 a month and go, "Oh my gosh, that's $2,400 a year, and I don't know if I can do that." But don't you think that we ought to be taking a look at what the cost of a person is versus the cost of the software?
Yeah.
Well,
I think trying to figure out, well, okay, how do I justify the price? And I think that there are two issues. One of them is what I mentioned, and then the other one is, and how will you grow if you don't do this? You can't just keep hiring people. You're trying to train them. Ray's talking about you're not doing the training you should be. Well, now you've got a reason to train them because you got this software nobody can run.
Yeah, that's right.
Well,
exactly.
we looked at, for a not-for-profit that I was involved with, we looked at a HIPAA compliant case assessment software. And they're very involved because you've got to keep all your confidential information confidential, but you've got to have casebook level healthcare references. So you've got to, when you're talking about schizophrenia or bipolar or whatever it happens to be, there's some very specific guidelines. The software out there is quite incredible, but we didn't find one that was user-friendly. I mean, it was so devastating to have somebody come in and understand how to use it that you had to have a PhD just to be able to go through the basic verbiage. And we're not talking about assigning people.
Yeah. And take a look at all the doctors that are spending all of their time scribbling stuff on pads nowadays instead of talking to you. And you know the work that's required is enormous in order to get through HIPAA, et cetera, and in order to be able to use these new big systems. And you kind of wonder if that's not a little overkill. I mean, you know, the industry, I think you said it well. The industry needs to learn, many of them have learned how to make these things easier to use.
Right.
So often they just focus on functionality and they don't even talk to the people who are going to use it.
So early on in my life working in technology, I was of the firm belief that technology was the solution to the world's evils. You know, Ron, much as I think you have said that marketing is the solution to all of the world's evils.
No, actually, marketing's becoming one of the evils right now.
but in actual fact, I've come to realize that technology by itself is absolutely worthless unless the human element is able to seamlessly integrate with it. And I think that's where you come back to people. We've got to keep people part of that solution, and we've got to be able to build technology that does seamlessly integrate with the way we think. People at the end of the day are going to lead the way we use technology, because the decision, even though we've got AI coming out, people are going to be the core decision makers at the end of that stream, is my hope and belief.
Are they? That's the question.
Well, yeah, are they?
Well, you can structure it that way or not. I mean, it's up to you.
One of the other benefits of technology is also marketing. And I'll give you a real life example. I'm looking at solar right now. I've had conversations with 4 of them. 2 of them came in with their iPads, and they had already taken a look at the house from from an elevation, and so they knew the size of the roof, et cetera, et cetera. And they come in with X number of panels in X price, and they explain it, and they spend the time to discuss each and every point. And then, and then you have the local guy who I'd like to use. He calls me 3 days later. He has a great recommendation. Calls me 3 days later, says, I will begin working on your estimate. That was a week ago. Now, if I was in a hurry, I would have already made a decision and moved on and just like, hey, sorry, buddy. I'm not in a hurry, and I'm very interested in seeing what he has to say because he came highly recommended. But here's an example of how the big companies are beating the little guys, and the industry is consolidating like crazy, and they're literally beating people by creating better estimates, which become better sales tools, because you've got the whole layout, you've got the whole thing, it's in front of you. Here's the price, here's your electric costs, here's your averages. We've bumped it up by X percentage, so we'll cover the future. Here's the increase in electricity, and here's your payback. Whoa, I think I'm sold. So, you literally have software that is being used as the primary marketing tool, and the little guy chooses not to access that. Why? He's too busy to learn. He thinks that he can do his estimates at night and save the $200 a month or $300 or whatever it is. So you get a guy who's making $100, $150, $200,000 a year. He's still willing to do slave labor at night by doing it the old-fashioned way, and with a calculator. Maybe he does it on a spreadsheet, but it's like, you know what? Do something that's accurate and fast and sells the product. Now you really got something. Good job. I mean, we could go on, and we no doubt will, on technology and integration.
One little example that failed to really take off, but I think you guys, when I finish off explaining this to you, you'll say, wow, that's a great technology. So I worked with a software technology consultant individual, and he came up with some very interactive database solutions for the wine industry, specifically for wine stores. And what he realized was that the small mom and pop wine stores all over the country had this inventory of stock, and they had a very good customer base. And people prefer to go to them than to a lot of locations to buy their liquor, their alcohol, their wine, specifically the wine. So he made a software solution that was very streamlined, where you could go into any particular wine store. They would sign up to it. They would register all of their products, everything they had in the store, by QR code or by scanned code, tie it into a resale system and a banking system, so that as it got sold, it would come off the inventory, and as boxes of stuff came in, they would receive it in. So it became a very live inventory control system. But where the magic was is he tied them into an online system where their clients could buy from them, and if they wanted 2 cases of wine and he had 1, it would automatically, through agreement, pull from the wine store a county off, 2 counties off, or wherever it was. So these wine stores now became a conglomerate of independent companies that agreed to agree together with a set margin on all of their product. And he actually did it in a small area, and 10, 20 stores, and it was very, very successful. It necessitated somebody shipping the product out from the store, taking it off the shelf and dealing with it. And you had to run through the system, because if you didn't run through the system, well, your inventory got whacked out. But this is 15 years ago, and it was almost revolutionary for that small ma and pa industry. And I think those kind of solutions can be developed for a lot of smaller industries, whereby there's some inbuilt exchange and you get flexibility due to multiple entities coming together.
Yeah, that's an interesting idea. I worked on that idea in 1985, and the only problem with it is that we had to have a mainframe in order to be able to automatically do recommended transfers from store to store. We sold that system for, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to Sears, and we found out later that they couldn't run it because their biggest Cray supercomputers would not run it.
Wow.
Yeah, the way this worked, by the way, it was using an Apple-based database system that was extremely easy to use and very reasonable. So, yeah, this was in the world in the 90s, late 90s.
Well, we were just learning how to build relational databases.
There you go.
Right.
So this is where technology has now, 100-fold improvements in the ability to process data.
But it's interesting that you mention that, because you see, that's a great idea. And I have always thought, this is abstract, I don't want to get too far off track here, but if you could tie the entire country's inventory together in one place, which in a way Amazon is doing, think about the increased turnover and the higher utilization of everything in every store.
Oh,
see, I mean, this would really revolutionize
turns ratio.
Yeah, well, and Ed loves this. Think about the money you could take out of business and invest in other things, because now you don't have to own every stick of inventory. You just have to sell it.
Yeah.
See, it's a great idea. And so that's kind of where we were thinking. But, I would talk to programmers about stuff like this, and they would go, Ron, you are absolutely out of your mind. I mean, there's no way we can do that. And I didn't even get permission to hook customers to inventory. So,
well, going back to the McDonald's,
too big of a project.
Going back to the McDonald's version, this is exactly what they did.
Yes.
Yeah. And the guy in, Georgia, who has a low turnover, he wasn't going to invest in this. Corporate came in and put the whole thing in. And after a while, he's realizing he doesn't have to place orders. Yeah. Everything stuff comes in on time. And then he gets a notice that says, hey, today you're going to need 3 people to work on the shift, not 5. Yeah. You can let 2 of them go. And he's like, I don't understand it. Yeah. Because they were actually doing a variation of AI 20 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, and Walmart arguably grew because they were so much further ahead of Sears. I mean, that's not saying much for our system, which couldn't, because it couldn't run on their computers. But Walmart figured it out some way just a few years later. And of course, things really changed rapidly when the PCs got started, and we came down to minis and eventually to distributed all cloud-based stuff now. And so, Walmart has never really been given credit, except for a few retail techie guys, to say the reason that they were successful is because they were way ahead of other retailers in terms of their inventory control, their POS systems, just their technology as a whole. They could make decisions that made sense. On the other hand, Sears never, and I mean, we had dozens of these people, every kind of person in the company, from buyers to executives, in our building over a period of 2 years while we're doing this. They had no idea what was going on in their stores because they couldn't crunch the information to find out what was selling. I hate to say that about Sears, but you look at Sears, you can see where they are, and look where Walmart is. So, I mean, information is key here. The little guy needs to recognize that serving the customer, saving labor is the start. Having the data to make decisions is the end. That's how you really, really benefit your business. You got to have the data, and you got to join the world. So,
well, I think, going back to that idea of employee volatility and how that connects to what John's been talking about in terms of infrastructure and software. The point is that if you have a good team and the CEO or the operator of the company, even if it's a small company with 5 to 20 employees, he's already covered his bases on that, and he can focus on these things that we're talking about that go beyond the normal day-to-day operations, so that he can actually see trends happening and move in that direction. That's how the little ones grow. The ones who don't grow are the ones that get stuck in not being able to get away from their employees and become an obstacle to growth, as opposed to a promoter of growth.
Yeah, right. Well said. So the number 3 is, and I'm taking this one, what's the opportunity in the aftermath of COVID and all of this that we've gone through? They suggest that there are opportunities for the winners, for the ones who didn't get beat up as badly as the other ones, or the ones who took enough advantage of COVID to have gained a little bit. That one of the things you can do is you can just kind of grow into the competitor space and take that business away. And it's absolutely true, but it's a little bit, I don't know, aggressive and in a way. And so I just finished reading the Art of War by Sun Tzu. I'm not sure that's pronunciation is right. And that really points out a whole principle of how you can utilize strategy in order to be able to grow your business by increasing your market, taking the market from somebody else, that sort of thing, lowering prices to gain more market, and a lot of different things. I think that's all true, but it's a little bit on the sort of negative kind of sort of a downer, like, oh, well, take advantage of your, but the truth of the matter is that every company needs to not only position themselves correctly, which is really positioning your company and your assets, your capabilities in the mind of your customer, but also there is this thing that I call emplacement, which has more to do with physical things, more to do with war strategy, since we talked about the art of war, and that has to do with where is the marketplace, and how do you euphemistically battle your competitors with price, with better customer service. Can you do an end run? Do you attack them directly? For many years, as I've mentioned, here before, the particular client that I have, we used a strategy called keep your head down. And that strategy, that was just a fun way to say, we do not want our competitors to realize we're growing pretty rapidly. And so what did we do to promote that? Well, we basically didn't promote it. We didn't do advertising. Because this particular business sold door to door, it happened to be a milk delivery system, because they sold mostly door to door, which 30 years later, we still do that. They could go into neighborhoods, and the only way competitors would find out that they had sort of taken a block is because in a couple of weeks, you would find that there are milk boxes of our company on the front door instead of theirs. Now, in addition to that, we tried very, very hard and directed salespeople never, ever, ever approach our competitor's customer. We did not want them to know we were taking business. We wanted to take a large piece of business that was outside of their customer business because we didn't want them to know that we were doing well. Because at one point in time, they were 25 times bigger than we were. They could have squashed us like a bug. And so that was a specific strategy. There's a case where and we've been through several aftermaths over the last 25, 30 years, and there's a little different strategy on each one of those. But the idea of emplacement is to understand where you are physically, and that might be a retail store that is down the block from one that's on the corner that has better visibility. I had stores like that, where we had to have a different strategy than our stores that were on the corner that had all this visibility. You got to do different signage, you have to do more advertising, you have to have better windows. There are whole groups of things that you can do. But I would say that the real answer here to this question is what you guys have said in the first two. And that is, you gotta have the right people, you gotta get them well trained, and you have to pursue technology in a big way today. If you're behind, you gotta catch up. Instead of doing invoices every night, figure out how to do your technology updates, and learn about technology. Go to seminars, spend your extra time doing the things that will advance your understanding of technology if you're small. If you're more medium size, you can afford to hire people to come in and give you different ideas about that. Hire John, hire other IT people, hire business process experts just to come in and go to your trade shows. The software people are going to be there too. Ask them to give you a presentation of what they do, and see 5 or 6 or 7 of them, not because you want to understand their software really, really well, but because you want to learn a little bit about what they know, because they've had their software corrected and corrected and corrected by people just like yourself.
Mm.
We're running into a problem, I think, in our age group or our peer group. I think we've each got friends who, one of them, very successful realtor, and made the decision that he's going to retire, making a lot of money, done extremely well. And the retirement isn't based on anything else except for the fact that he was a paper and pencil realtor. And he had a team of a couple of people who would do the transactions, but he said it's getting to be so involved where everything happens online and everything is seamless that he just simply doesn't want to jump into that game. And I kind of understand that.
Yeah.
My warning is that I think we've got to be aware of what the trends worldwide are, and we've got to be salient with it. There comes a point where you might not need to know how to program a certain database, but you need to functionally know kind of how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody else can program it.
Yeah.
But you've kind of got to know the boundaries of it. And making the decision for software is one of the, making an informed software decision that's going to run about 60 or 70% of your business. A lot of people do it based on price, and that is just the wrong way to go about it.
Right.
Because it's the fully exercised cost over a period of time that is the true variable.
Yeah, that's right.
And are these people, is the software you've got, is it alive? Do they have a team of people who are organically keeping it up to date with what's going on? So
it's tough.
It's very tough. Yeah. Very, very difficult.
So Ed is now going to summarize what we said, if we haven't summarized each other too much, and tell us who wins the debate.
Well, I'm not a real good judge on who's going to win the debate, but I would like to take a look at this a little differently, and I would like to put it in relation to how to value a company. And you can start with the balance sheet in valuing a company, but you're going to be missing 70% of the value of the business. And the 70% of the value of the business is the items that we have discussed that generates future cash flow. So starting off with what Ray's conversation on people, you have to have a strong team. We all know that the number one indicator of value of a business a lot of times is getting the CEO, the owner, out of the business. And because they get so involved in the day-to-day opportunities, they're missing the big picture. They don't know what's going on around them. They don't know about the opportunities of M&A or partnerships because they're worried about getting a delivery made at 10 o'clock in the morning.
So you don't mean literally throwing them out of the business. You mean getting them to work
No, I mean
on their
promoting them.
business instead of in their business,
I
right?
want them promoted to the chairman of the board,
Yeah.
which is a big picture position. It's not in the details of running the business.
Right.
Right.
So you got to have a strong team to do that. And nowadays, trying to find good employees is very difficult. A lot more difficult now than it was before COVID. So you better have training programs in place so that people are realizing their opportunities of their personal lives and their personal goals. And there have to be incentive plans, and they have to be engaged. They have to be given the ability to talk, to give insights into the business, where in the old days, a lot of times they weren't given that opportunity. And that's a way of really growing the business. So people. I don't know where else you go beyond that. So if you're looking at buying a business and you're looking at a certain business, or comparing several businesses, first thing you're going to do is look at the team, the people. And Ron and I have been just recently brought into this type of thing. It's really important to have a good team behind you, because if you're selling a business, you're going to be leaving what's left. It's the people that you put in place. They're going to add the value to the business. Second is, technology. Technology makes you more efficient. It makes you more effective in meeting the goals and objectives of your customers, which is what it's all about in the end anyway. So the better you can deliver and execute on those measures, the more value you're going to add to your company. And I can understand there's a big change going on right now where everything's becoming a digital world, online, and a lot of older folks are having a very difficult time adjusting to that. But it's the way of the future. We've had these conversations before a couple of years ago, and I was kind of saying, well, you have to have an option for the older folks. But I might have been wrong on that. Ron was pretty specific. He said you got to focus on the online and minimize the people that are involved in doing the work. And with all the labor laws and wage increases that are going on, you have to minimize your workforce as much as possible. But by the same token, you're talking about fewer people, but better paid people who are more engaged and are providing more value to your bottom line. The last point is, I think it's the most important or it's tied into the other two very, very closely, and that is you have to have a strategic vision. You have to have a roadmap of where you're going so that you're taking advantage of all of the opportunities that are out there, and you're minimizing the threats of your business. And so by doing so, you put together a strategic plan, and that's your roadmap, and that's what you're using to hold people accountable for the future. So therefore, the more value that they provide to the business, the more incentives there should be for them for creating that value. Somehow my screen went black. I'm not sure if you heard anything what I said.
Yeah, we
we can hear you.
We hear you fine. You,
Okay, I can't see anybody.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
you're-
you yourself are a little dark for some reason, Ed.
yeah, for some reason, you're not broadcasting quite as well as you normally do, but that was very good, and leave it to you to come up with something that
We
none of the
forgot.
rest of us did. And of course, we were talking about those 3 specific points, but you were quite right. Probably the last thing that the Vistage or Convene or any of these groups or any small group of businesses that get together and talk about what they're doing, probably the last thing they would ever say is, "Oh, well, I got to have a better strategy," because they think that they have one. But as we've discussed many, many times about strategy, and it's like they rarely do have one. They don't have a strategy that works, and it's not formalized. And as a result, you can't really get very much done. And
Right.
so strategy. What do you say? What do you say, Ray? Strategy eats what for breakfast?
Strategy, culture eats strategy for
Oh,
breakfast.
culture eats. Okay, well, maybe culture is more important than strategy.
Right. And that goes back to people. You know, if the people
Yeah.
are not aligned, then all that strategy stuff is just a waste of paper.
That's right. Yeah, that is right. Well, this has been a great discussion. Thank you, gentlemen, and we will see you all again next week for another exciting meeting of the
Yes.
Four Consulting Amigos. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah. Thank you.